Welcome everyone. Hope you're safe and well and wherever you are in the world. I'm Jake Colvin, the Executive Director of the Global Innovation Forum. Delighted to host this online forum today. And the purpose of it is to explore how digital tools can contribute to the resiliency of micro and small businesses in the wake of the COVID-19 crisis. So we have a really great group of small businesses as well as some technology providers who are providing those digital tools that are enabling small business like theirs to cope and adapt and pivot during COVID-19. And so what we hope to do today is to dig into two main topics. The first is just to explore how micro and small businesses are using these digital tools to adapt. And the second is the importance of developing enabling policy frameworks for digital trade and e-commerce, as well as sort of specific and granular trade promotion programs as part of COVID-19 economic recovery responses so that we can support the resilience of micro and small businesses. For those of you who are not familiar with the Global Innovation Forum, GIF is a project of the National Foreign Trade Council Foundation, and our goal is to identify and engage a living network of small businesses and government officials. And we try to elevate the opportunity to be global from day one in the digital age. We try to explore how global markets can improve the resilience of small businesses and how governments can enable entrepreneurs' global journeys. Just to give one example of our work, just this past Friday, we released a report exploring how women are utilizing digitally enabled networks to manage uncertainty and how governments can support women's entrepreneurship through COVID-19 economic recovery efforts. And on Friday, we had an opportunity to hold a private discussion to build on themes in that report with Canada's Economic Development Minister, Mélanie Joly, and 19 really amazing Canadian entrepreneurs. So you can find that report and the recap on our website. You can also contact my colleague, Jamaica Gale, who's on this forum as well for more details. And she led the report and the event. So for this event, GIF is honored to host in collaboration with the WTO's Joint Statement Initiative on micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. And I'll introduce Ambassador Jose Luis Cancela of Uruguay in a bit, who chairs the initiative, but also wanted to recognize the great work of Emmanuel and Kian and their colleagues at the WTO Secretariat's office for their work in supporting small businesses and specifically for their collaboration with this event. Before introducing Ambassador Cancela, I wanted to give you a sense of format and just go over a couple of housekeeping items. In terms of the format, I'm going to turn very shortly to Ambassador Cancela to provide introductory remarks. Then was going to engage small businesses for a series of questions and answers and discussion. And after that, my hope is to engage additional business leaders so that they can highlight the role of digital trade and e-commerce policy in enabling the e-commerce ecosystem that these micro and small businesses are relying on. And I believe we have Mercado Libre, Google, and UPS with us to do that. And then just open it up for additional Q&A with participants on the line if there is time remaining. For housekeeping measures, please note that this event is being recorded. The podcast will be made available on the dedicated MSME public page of the WTO, as well as GIF's webpage. And you should, during the course of this webinar, see a link in the chat box to those resources, and GIF will also circulate it afterwards. Interpretation is available in English, French, and Spanish, possibly Spanish. You can select the language of your choice by clicking on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen. We've scheduled 2 hours for this panel. We'll see if it goes that long and look forward to the conversation. Please, if you have a question, use the chat function to ask. Don't use the Q&A function, which I believe has been disabled. And also, please clearly indicate to which panelist your question is addressed and identify yourself. For technical support, or if you have any questions, please contact Kian Kasagari from the WTO Secretariat via the chat function. So with all that out of the way, I'd like to introduce Ambassador Cancela. I've been so pleased to have a chance to collaborate with Ambassador Jose Luis Cancela of Uruguay on this discussion and on several others in the past at UNCTAD and the WTO Public Forum. Ambassador Cancela has been a champion of small business and a leader in encouraging WTO members to prioritize the needs of small business and development in his work in Geneva. Ambassador Cancela, thank you so much for partnering with us on this discussion. I'd like to turn it over to you for some initial thoughts before we jump into the conversation with small businesses.
mucho oír sus ideas preliminares antes de entrar en...
Welcome to everyone. Thank you very much, Jake, for your words. And let me join you in thanking Emmanuel and Kian for their
a Emmanuel
contribution.
y a Dian por sus aportes a esta iniciativa y a la causa de las MIPYMES.
The ambassador of Uruguay to
Je suis l'ambassadeur de l'Uruguay à l'OMC.
the informal working group on MSMEs at the WTO. So let me begin by thanking the Global Innovation Forum and in particular our friends Jake and Jamaica for their engagement and for co-organizing this event together with the informal working group on MSMEs at the WTO. For those who recently joined us, the informal working group on MSMEs was launched in December 2017 at the 11th WTO Ministerial Conference by a group of like-minded members who saw the need for better coordination and more proactive action to better support MSME participation in international trade. The group is working on a set of recommendations covering issues from access to information to regulatory development, trade facilitation, and access to finance. We have organized various webinars on these issues. You can find the links to these events and to their podcast on the MSMEs public page of the WTO. I believe the link of the MSME web page is now on the chat box. Last week, we celebrated the International Day of MSMEs, which, as you know, was the 27th of June. And in that context, we discussed actions and approaches followed by governments to support their MSMEs during this COVID-19 pandemic. One of the main outcomes of this discussion is that MSMEs resilience is essential for the economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. To build MSME resilience, some governments are helping MSMEs innovate and adopt digital technologies. One of the main lessons from this crisis is that trade digitalization has proved to be critical in this pandemic context. We are likely going to witness more governments supporting their MSMEs through innovation and digital technologies. Hence, this webinar is very, very timely. Let me conclude by expressing my gratitude to our speakers today who accepted to share with us how digital technologies shape their activities. I'm looking forward to hearing your views on the role digital technologies can play to help MSMEs contribute more to international trade. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. And so I wanted now to turn to the entrepreneurs who we have for the panel. And I'm really grateful to be joined by an impressive and diverse group of panelists from around the world. So just going to run through and introduce them briefly. Josefina Urzaiz is the co-founder of Cielo Hammocks and based in Mexico. Eno Umo is the co-founder of Global Air Media and the Global Air Drone Academy based in Baltimore, Maryland in the United States. Celia Boyd is the co-founder and managing director of She Investments in Cambodia. And Reina El Chemadali is the founder of Little Engineer in Lebanon and the UAE. And so I think Celia gets the prize for staying up the latest from Cambodia to be with us. And so really appreciate that. I was just going to jump right in and maybe ask Josefina, if we could start with you. Can you tell us about your company and describe a little bit how it's been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic? And just to give you a sense, the group that you're speaking to today, I think will be particularly interested in how your business is engaging in global markets and any key takeaways you have from that engagement in global markets. So Josefina, maybe we could start with you.
Yes. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for making us part of this conversation. I'm happy to share our experience. So really quickly, Cielo Hammocks is a social impact company that works with a network of about 900 Mayan artisans that hand weave hammocks from home, and this is 95% women. Our hammocks are sold in 110 countries, both in the retail and wholesale format. And we work with artisans spread out in 35 different villages across the south of Mexico. And so our work impacts thousands of people that are part of these communities that sadly are one of the more impoverished areas in the country. We were impacted two ways, both on our external customers, that is, orders were canceled because all our wholesale distributors had their stores closed, and we were left with inventory ready to be shipped. And then on the other side, from our supply chain, all our artisans working from home obviously have been impacted by the lockdowns in the city and not being able to travel. And so we had to make a few changes to continue to do the work that we do. One of that was using technology to shift our split of wholesale retail to more retail than wholesale. And we have done that successfully through Instagram, promoting and marketing through Google Ads. We have also used the recently launched Amazon Mexico as another platform to do retail sales. And basically COVID kickstarted our efforts that we had to change the ratio that we historically did from wholesale retail. We also changed the location where we do the exchange of raw materials for finished product. We moved closer to the villages so that they don't have to travel and be exposed to public transportation. So in terms of logistics, we had to do a lot of changes there. All of our workers that were able to work from home stayed working from home via email and smartphones. Especially WhatsApp had been very, very helpful to the work that we do, not only to process orders with our artisans because they can see the picture, we can see how they are in the process, and we can communicate more efficiently that way. But also, we also kept some workers that had to physically be there. We decided to do carpooling for them to avoid them using public transportation. The shipping companies have been incredibly useful because they did not stop working throughout the pandemic. And so we were able to continue to do our work of mainly exports thanks to UPS, FedEx, and some of the air freight companies like Lufthansa, Turkish Air, and the like. The silver lining has been of all this is that people are spending more time at home. And so because they're spending more time at home, they're thinking of a hammock to do so in a more relaxed and friendly environment as they work from home. And so that has been kind of our experience in how we had to confront this new normal, because I don't think things will be back the same. And technology has certainly democratized access to markets globally, and we would be absolutely convinced that we would be in a much more severe economic crisis had we not had the technology that we have today. And the business, albeit not functioning at full percent, we are partially functional, and people, some of them have been able to continue to do work. Now, Latin America is going to be severely hurt, I feel, in many other countries, because we have not had multi-billionaire stimulus packages that Europe and the US has had. And my economy in Mexico depends, 80% of people is employed by SMEs. And so as the crisis continues and things continue to be closed down, a lot of people is losing their jobs. And I think we're going to see a severe economic crisis in these nations that, you know, there's no payroll insurance, and there are not, again, millions of dollars of checks mailed out to people. So I think the worst is yet to come. And but yes, certainly technology has allowed us to continue to do some of our work and even improve in many things that we didn't see before. And that's our share.
Thank you very much, Josefina.
Thank you long.
Yeah, no, that was terrific. And I think a lot of what you said, we've heard echoed in other entrepreneurs that we've spoken with. You know, I think that idea that e-commerce is really a lifeline for businesses and has completely during this crisis replaced wholesale and brick and mortar retail. And then also, I mean, we've heard echoed the challenge that you've identified at the end, which is that, I mean, things are tough right now, and there's no denying that. I think, you know, what we've tried to focus on are those bright spots that you mentioned as well. I want to turn now to Eno Umo, who's the co-founder of Global Air Media and the Global Air Drone Academy in Baltimore. So Eno, same question to you. Can you tell us a little bit about your business, role of global markets, and how you're thinking about things during the crisis?
Sure. Good morning from the States here. Very happy to be with everyone today, and thank you so much for the invitation, distinguished guests and speakers. I'm very, very happy to be here with you all. So I am the co-founder of Global Air Media and the Global Air Drone Academy, and we are a two-part organization. First off, on the Global Air Media side, we are a for-profit FAA licensed drone services company. We've been around since 2015. And just to kind of give you a sense of how we got into the industry, I was actually in another profession in the construction field for years. And once I saw all of the different industries that were using drone technology, that really, you know, was my spark to get into the industry. So we studied a lot of, uses in agriculture, construction, which I was already familiar with, real estate, inspection, surveys. There's so many applications for drone technology. It was just a no-brainer for me to dive in. So we focused heavily initially on the commercial work. We went after large, construction companies, and we were actually focused on the data side of drone technology, not just providing, cool pictures and video. And even though they're very fun to fly, we want to use them to provide, data to improve, efficiency and safety on a number of different projects. So we were sustaining ourselves for a while with that. And then actually, approaching more and more training opportunities in schools, we saw that there was actually, a lack of knowledge by a large, population when it comes to what drone technology is used for. Even today, if you ask someone what are drones used for, they most likely say pictures and video, but, even to fight the COVID-19 virus, we are seeing technology, drone technology specifically, used to do that. On a larger scale, we've seen that, different government agencies like the Civil Aviation Authority, they are actually adopting drone regulations in real time. And we can't exactly expect them to be experts in drone technology. They're just as new to it as many other people. So we decided to take an educational and consultation program to these government organizations and to schools and institutions in general to teach them about, drone technology. So to that end, we ended up creating a nonprofit arm called the Global Air Drone Academy. And we essentially utilize drone technology and train people on how to become licensed professionals and ultimately how to become entrepreneurs in STEAM. So that's science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math. And we always say it's bigger than drones, for us. So we actually want to teach skills that students, young and old, can use outside of the industry altogether. So specifically with the engineering, learning how to build drones from scratch, learning different coding languages through drones, just like this DJI Tello right here. This is something that we use in our classroom. This is a really simple tool for you to learn Python and languages that you can use in a number of different industries. So, of course, doing a lot of training, that involves us being in the classroom, physically in the space. And, you know, since February, late February, March, we haven't had, of course, any in-person classes. So we actually had to move 100% virtually. So we did a number of things. We created, first of all, a free weekly meetup that we call the Virtual Drone Club. And this is actually for the younger crowd, kids who are just home, you know, looking for fun, innovative things to do. So we've been meeting for the past 2 months. Right now we have students that call in from all over the world. I believe 70% of our students are actually calling in from Nigeria, which is pretty awesome. We also have students from the UK, the UAE, South Africa, and you know, other countries as well. So it's pretty awesome to have, you know, those students there. On top of that, of course, we had to figure out how to do our workshops, you know, completely virtually. So we toured around with a couple of different ideas, and then we actually finalized on a concept that we call a drone camp in a box. So summertime is our, you know, most busy time, of course, with students looking for, you know, fun activities. Parents, of course, are looking for things for their students, for their kids to do. So we created this box called, you know, Drone Camp in a Box, and it comes with the drone, of course, t-shirt, lanyard, pen, an activities guide, so you can actually learn how to properly fly your drone. And then you automatically get enrolled to a week-long summer camp. So this actually was sort of like an e-commerce model that we had to adopt, and we've basically become a logistics company, you know, at this point. And prior actually to launching this, I personally did a lot of research on, you know, just e-commerce in general, drop shipping, just really to find out what else was out there. And this concept came together perfectly. So to date, over the past 3 weeks, we've already sold close to 200 boxes, mainly here in the United States, but we are planning to open up shipping internationally as soon as we have all the logistics in place. But this is definitely affecting what we do. So other tools that we've had to use, of course, Zoom is our best friend when it comes to reaching our students. We've also utilized, you know, Google Classroom. We've used Thinkific, which is where we place our online curriculum. So sort of like a learn as you go. You don't have to, you know, participate in the live sessions if you just want to go take the course. So we use platforms like Thinkific. We've also explored the use of Adobe Captivate, which is a new educational tool, of course, you know, by Adobe, but it's really focused on sort of like VR, and it's just a very visual type of way to teach the class. And then Canva. Canva is my go-to on a daily basis. To be honest, I don't even use a whole lot of Microsoft Word, just because I love the way that you can easily design and you know, easily whip up, you know, flyers and different marketing material for social media. So those are some of the main tools that we use. Last thing I want to touch on is going back to the global air media side, so our commercial arm. If anything, we have seen that this virus has actually improved the awareness of drones. And specifically, we've seen drones used for everything from attaching a speaker to the top of the drone to get out messages to people. We've seen drones being used to spray disinfectant in certain areas. We've seen drones being used to for thermal detection, for fever detection on people that are, you know, on the ground. So there are a number of different uses, and of course, delivery of different food and medical supplies and items. So this has actually boosted the profile of the drone industry. We are still getting a lot of commercial work here in the U.S. On a weekly basis. We're still going out to map construction sites and take real estate photos. Of course, drones naturally have to social distance, you know, from people. So it definitely fits for us. So we're very excited about the opportunity and you know, how we can grow from here. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Eno. I really appreciate that. Canva is amazing. I mean, we use it here at the Global Innovation Forum as well, and I think that's what the slides that you were looking at this morning were designed with. So Celia, I wanted to turn to you. Celia is the co-founder and managing director of She Investments in Cambodia. And you know, she's an entrepreneur herself, but also supports other women in micro, small, and growing businesses to scale. And so, Celia, over to you. Maybe tell us a little about your business, role of global markets.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here tonight, my time. Really appreciate the opportunity. So hi everyone, my name is Celia. So I'm based in Cambodia. I'm obviously not Cambodian, I'm from Australia, and my co-founder is a very amazing Khmer woman who can't be here tonight because she's at home with her kid. But a little bit about She, to briefly introduce. We started at the beginning of 2015, and we are a social enterprise with our headquarters in Phnom Penh, but based in a few provinces across Cambodia. So essentially, our core work is delivering business incubator and accelerator programs for Khmer women, and they are the first and only incubator and accelerators in Cambodia that have a gender focused and are culturally tailored. So essentially that means that I am not the person that delivers the programs. All of our work is delivered by Khmer women in Khmer language with Khmer female participants. So the reason that we started She is because across much of the world, the majority of entrepreneurs are actually women, but in Cambodia, more than 60% of entrepreneurs are female. And the majority of those businesses are micro-sized and informal. So less than 10% of the businesses in Cambodia are actually operating in the formal economy and are registered, but only around 2% of businesses in Cambodia are formally registered by women. So there's a overwhelming majority of female entrepreneurs in Cambodia, but they tend to be stuck at this MSME, micro small business size, operating cash-based and informally. And there's a lot of issues with that, obviously. So they essentially do not have the ability to scale and operate as part of the global economy. So that is what She does. We focus on supporting those women because we believe that even if a woman has, a family-run business with a few employees, collectively, by supporting those women to scale up and enter the formal SME economy, we can make a massive economic impact. So the impact of COVID on Cambodia has been really interesting. Unlike many countries, which many people here tonight are located in, we actually didn't have a huge impact on the health system. We didn't have any deaths in Cambodia, which was interesting, and we had less than 150 cases all up. However, the economic impact is massive, and like many countries, Cambodia is facing a huge recession. But essentially overnight, Cambodia lost around 25% of its annual income, which came from tourism and trade. So places like Siem Reap, for example, is one of the top 3 visited places in the world, and almost overnight became empty of all tourists, except for people who were stuck here. So that means that the majority of people and businesses in that city and in that province were completely reliant on tourism, with tens of thousands of people visiting Angkor Wat every week, for example. So we had garment factories closing down everywhere, hundreds of thousands of people out of jobs, and the vast majority of the people impacted are low-income earners and are in the informal economy. So for She, I suppose the impact was similar to any other business, and then exacerbated by that was the women that we were working with and supporting. So we obviously couldn't do in-person training workshops anymore. But I think there were a number of a number of negative and then some positive, if you can say positive, impacts of COVID. The negative ones were obviously, it's obviously a really emotional time for us as an organization, and working with so many women, getting phone calls and messages and everything constantly from the women that we're supporting and the struggles that they're facing. The uncertainty for our own organisation and for our staff. People are losing jobs all over the place. we have managed to keep 100% of jobs at She, but obviously when it starts, it's a really uncertain time, and it's difficult to keep your team engaged during a time like that. I would say the biggest issues that we've had have been gender specific and technology specific. So the first is women at home that can't leave their homes and can't attend formal workshops, whether they're our staff or the female entrepreneurs that we're supporting. They're still expected to do all of the gendered domestic responsibilities that they've always had, but they're at home all the time. And so adapting workshops to those situations where we have our trainers and our participants with kids running around everywhere, for example, can be really disruptive and difficult. But at the same time, those women really wanted to feel like they were part of a community and they needed people to talk to through these challenges. We had to adapt everything that we do because women were still expected to cook for their families and do childcare. Many women, when they're stuck at home, are stuck in potentially abusive situations, and then they cannot leave the house. So there's a lot of issues that have come along with that. And then related to technology, I suppose there's two things. One is internet connections, particularly in provinces, and not good. So we were doing things like sending out internet home packages to people, sending out phone credit to our staff and to our participants so that they could use their hotspots and hotspot into Zoom meetings, for example. And then following on from that, the digital literacy skills. So in Cambodia, everyone has Facebook and many people have smartphones. Very few people know how to use an email or, sorry, I shouldn't say that. In rural areas, digital literacy skills are much lower. So using email, using computers, learning how to use Zoom for the first time, that was difficult for the women that we were working with, but it was also very difficult for our team. So we had our team learning how to use Zoom out in the province with their laptops connected to car batteries, trying to charge them with, in a storm because it's rainy season, whilst they're trying to deliver a webinar on cash flow forecasting during a crisis to other women around the country who were dialing in on their hotspots and, have never used Zoom before. So there's a huge digital literacy gap. And that's something that we had to address immediately. And it's also taken us to a point where we've started to factor that into the future as well. And, there's never, it's a pretty awful situation. But I suppose if we try to look on the bright side, there's a number of positive things that came out of it as well. We adapted very quickly, our team adapted, and our response completely changed. We managed to maintain all of our partnerships, but we didn't wait for funding, I suppose. We had a meeting immediately and said, okay, these women are going to need our support more than ever, so we just need to adapt everything that we do straight away. So we just went ahead and waited for the revenue to catch up. And built some new partnerships along the way. So at the same time as we were changing everything that we're doing, and used a lot of the same tools actually as previous speakers. So Zoom obviously was a big one. We also started using Thinkific, which very highly recommend. It's a really great platform, very affordable too. And started investing more in developing our own digital resources as well. So we, at the same time as continuing as best we could and introducing blended learning, as well as the online support we were providing, we also built new partnerships at the same time with with government, for example, so the Ministry of Economy and Finance in Cambodia, and also with Youth Business International and Google.org, so that we could create a whole new digital resource center and different tools so that we could make them accessible for the women that we're working with. Because there's a lot of support and a lot of resources that came out immediately during COVID for entrepreneurs, but it's all in English. And the women that we work with, it's just not accessible for them. So we realized essentially, I guess we realized where our value proposition really is, and continued to do what we do best, and that is focus on creating products for the women that we support. So that's a little bit about, yeah, the impact for us. We don't trade globally. However, we do partner with organizations in different countries, such as Myanmar. And so it affected us in terms of travel, obviously. But because of things like Thinkific and Zoom, we've continued to create a lot of products and a lot of training in the background, and intend to deliver in person later, or we will be we're actually doing more training of trainers. And so we're training a partner in Myanmar, for example, and providing them with all of the curriculum through Thinkific so they can actually deliver on their own. So that's how we've changed in terms of our global, I suppose, work. But the women that we're working with who are trading internationally, they have been very, very severely hit by this. And that's something that is kind of still not really being addressed very well, but is increasingly becoming a little bit easier over time.
Thanks, Celia. And I think one thing that's really important to highlight, which you did, is even if you yourself are not global, the extent to which you're using these global digital tools in order to connect your community locally. I mean, I think a lot of what we do at the Global Innovation Forum is we engage with small businesses who see global markets as an opportunity and are engaging there. But what I found, even in my own life, dealing with restaurants and other places locally, is the extent to which all these local businesses who will never have an international customer are using this entire suite of e-commerce and digital tools in order to run their business and pivot and survive during this time. I also wanted to get back at some point to what you said about partnerships with the governments, and wanted to dig in maybe a little deeper on your partnership with the Ministry of Economy. But for now, I wanted to go to Rana Chemadali, who is the founder of Little Engineer, which is a really cool company that's aimed at educating students and maximizing their potential in robot building, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So Rana, if I could turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. I would like to thank you all for this really inspiring meeting, to share and to connect with each other and to learn from each other. I would like to tell you that Lebanon's story is completely different than what I have heard. So we are facing a double impact of economic crisis topped with Corona. So Corona is nothing to us. Corona is manageable. However, the economic crisis is heavily impacting us as entrepreneurs in Lebanon, with the restriction that we have on the capital control on our money in banks. We cannot move anything. So this is why I decided to move to UAE, and that was in January, so before Corona. I started to launch my company there just to rescue my team and the company and to see how we can scale up from in the region. So a brief about Little Engineer. We started as an after-school center teaching young minds robotics, renewable energy, and aviation, space industry with our partnership with Airbus. And with time, we saw that delivering, after school is not enough. And I thought, how can I make it accessible to every learner? And I can. So I came up with a team to develop the content from KGs to grade 12, a content that could be integrated in curriculum to cover the whole academic year, so students can be engaged. And we came up with the solutions with the kids, trained a trainer for the educators, and the business moved from business to client to business to business. And we were doing excellent. I started to move to KSA, and the industry is exponential. However, the economic crisis that we faced, it refrained us and stopped us from, moving forward, because we cannot export, we cannot get money into our accounts, And with the late economic crisis that we are facing, we faced a severe challenge, which is we were not able even to pay the hosting for our website, the fees for our drop boxes. So everything was, you know, hard on us. So this is why I went to UAE and opened the account. I managed to rescue, you know, our company, the infrastructure of the company. And I took Corona as an opportunity, because I was locked down in Dubai alone, to reorganize and restructure the company. And because the internet is amazing in UAE and everything is easy to manage, I came up with the platform, the online store, and the online activities, which were I offered free of charge for our clients and our network, our partners in around the world, in Nigeria, Kenya, Botswana, Singapore. So for us to retain the brand of the Little Engineer. So I didn't want to lose the brand. I didn't want to lose, you know, because our business is hands-on. So we have to work together, and social distancing was imposed on all of us. So we couldn't manage to proceed and generate money during this crisis. But I took opportunity to raise online activities, and they were really impressive. And I guess we're gonna scale up with this technology now, because the online activity is a must everywhere, especially that we cannot predict the lifetime of this pandemic that is invading us. So in parallel, because it was a lockdown, I came up with generating an online store to sell our, you know, loose part products and everything. But this online store is not functional in Lebanon because we have the inflation, we cannot price, we don't know how to price. So every day we have a rate for the exchange rate. So I will take this online store to the region, and maybe I will sell it outside to any investor, because this is, as I'm telling you, it's an amazing technology that will last forever, because robotics is everywhere. The technology is in every school, in every home. So we need to think on how to provide our customers with the best tools and the easiest through online, either store or activity. And because Corona is affected us, I came up with a solution to rent our kits. Instead of putting them on the shelf, I came up with sanitizing the kits and renting them and making our courses 1 week time, not 2 months or 1 month. So we can roll out and generate a little bit money to sustain, you know, the fees and of our team, because I don't want to lose the team, because with my team, I can scale up everywhere. We are waiting for the airports to open, to relocate and to relaunch the business in a better way. So in Lebanon, the case is not coronavirus, it's the economic crisis that really affecting us. It's the story of our decision maker who are not aware of how they are collapsing the economy by refraining all the entrepreneurs to move on. Imagine that if we do a business and we collect a, let's say a check for, like, let's say $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, we cannot touch it for 6 months. So it's really hard. It's not coronavirus. Coronavirus is nothing to we as Lebanese entrepreneur. We are calling for help and pressure on our government to wake up and to support entrepreneurs. And this is our story.
Thank you, Rana. Really appreciate you sharing your story. I just wanted to stop and check in and remind everyone that please use the chat function to ask questions of the speakers. And please clearly indicate to which panelist your question you want to address your question to. And with that, I wanted to kind of combine a question that I had with a question that we had received from a participant prior to the start of this discussion. And so maybe just a little bit of background. You know, what I heard from all of you was the extent to which you're using this entire suite of digital tools to run your business. So, you know, I heard electronic payments, social media to keep your communities connected, cloud services, logistics and shipping services, e-commerce platforms and marketplaces. And so, you know, this informal working group on micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises that you're speaking to today was created to share best practices, recommendations, and foster a dialogue between governments on public policy issues related to micro and small businesses. And so they're currently in the process of creating a number of proposals that would encourage countries to consider the specific needs of small businesses in terms of trade facilitation and e-commerce policy. So with that as background, can you identify a specific issue that governments could help you with to become more competitive in the global e-commerce marketplace? And so, thinking about things like simpler or easier customs rules and procedures, easier access to different payment systems around the world, making sure that you have access to global internet platforms and technologies and social media systems, things like that. The question is directed to all of you. Maybe Josefina, if you could jump in first.
Sure thing. So one thing that we're facing right now, actually, with the Mexican government, and specifically the Secretaría de Economía, the economic department, is that we've had issues actually with our exports. Every export needs to be accompanied by a certificate of origin that basically demonstrates that it's made in Mexico, and that lifts all the tariffs for all the countries that we have trade agreements with, which we have plenty. So because of COVID, all the because of AMLO, sorry, that's our president, all the regional offices, he wanted to close them out, and then they were closed out. But now, because of COVID, the little people that were left over at the local offices is not going to work. So we can't get this paper, which is a physical piece of paper. Although we fill it in online, we can't get it printed. And so we're having to ship with our own personal certification of the origin of the goods. And Europe has been fine thus far, but say in Japan, we have merchandise stuck because it's not being able to get through because of the lack of the paperwork. So there has to be some work done around digitalizing all this export, import, tariffs, and all the paperwork that goes accompanied by exporting to a more digital worldwide connection, where we're not faced with this, when we don't need to print physical paper anymore. I think we can move on beyond that. That's one thing. And the other I wanted to mention was the financing. Financing has been a huge problem, and it's been very ironic to me to see how international banks, and I won't name them, they have presence in both Europe and the US and in Mexico, have had completely different policies in how they have approached this crisis and what their kind of benefits to existing customers for, delayed payment, forgiving the debt, or many other of this have been absolutely different that they have been in their other countries. I believe part of the huge problem we're going to face is that Latin American countries and all underdeveloped countries, I don't think we have been prepared to have or funds. I mean, not only not a plan, but I don't think we even have the funds to then maintain or sustain the small and medium enterprises during a global crisis like we're living. So I would advocate for having some sort of savings account that could be there for times of crisis like the one we're living in. And let alone having a plan on how to deal with it, but at least the funding. We are in a nation where it's double-digit interest rates that are absolutely forbidding, basically, for small and medium enterprises, and so that makes very difficult to survive, because you're basically left to your own devices and are not equity to keep on your business running, to keep on paying payroll, to maintain all your employees, like Rana was saying. We don't have the payment issue, but we have the lack of funds to continue to run businesses.
Thank you very much. And that's been a challenge that we've heard echoed from almost every small business that we've spoken with. I wanted to just maybe go back to your comments about customs and kind of digitizing those procedures that can be digitized. There is a separate initiative going on at the WTO right now on e-commerce policy. And so I know in that set of negotiations, there are efforts to come up with new procedures or new rules that would digitize processes that could be digitized, and try to take some of the other processes away from the border, so that payments could become electronic and wouldn't have to be paid at exactly that moment where a package arrives at the border. And so that is also this need for better customs rules, more efficient processing, better understanding of what tariff rates are at a very basic level are comments that we hear very frequently from the small businesses that we work with that trade in goods. Eno, I wanted to go to you now as well. Can you identify that one specific issue that you would advocate government officials to work on?
Sure. So this is, most likely specific to our business, since we're dealing, with drones. But right before, this crisis hit, I would say in late January, early February, we actually had to send out 3 small drones to Zambia. And these drones are under regulatory, weight. The registration weight is 250 grams. All of these drones were under 80 grams. But we still had to go through the same process as if we were shipping a large scale, drone. So for us, generally, every country that we deal with has different regulations when it comes with drones, and most countries right now are very sensitive to any drone, coming into the country. So it's not as easy as us just sending a drone camp in a box to, Nigeria, for instance. We actually have to have a relationship with the CAA, have a relationship with someone on ground in the system that can actually assist us with getting these products through. And even in Zambia, the amount that we had to pay for shipping, plus the taxes, plus the customs fees, far outweighed the cost of the actual drone. So it definitely affected that project, and it's obviously affecting how we proceed from here. We are using some of the tools that we have, sort of like the embassy diplomatic pouch, to send when we have projects directly with the embassy. But this definitely is an issue for us. And like I said, it's specific to us because it is drone regulations, which in many countries, it's taking some time to even formalize, those rules and regulations. So it's something that we are, dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and really why we've had to restrict, our sale of the boxes here in the U.S. until, those issues are worked out.
Thank you, Eno. And that's, what you raised is an issue that's specific to your industry, but there are lots of those industry-specific issues that are coming kind of to the forefront right now. We did another webinar with a telemedicine company from Brazil, and so they are having trouble getting into new countries virtually because in some countries, an organization like Doctors Without Borders can physically go in temporarily into a country and treat people on the ground. But this Brazilian company, as a telemedicine company, cannot go in virtually to do consultations in essentially sort of just a different manner of providing the same service. And so, you see these industry-specific issues that I think do need to be worked out in order to kind of just sort of improve the situation for the various industries that are affected. I wanted to go maybe to Celia now. Could you identify that one issue?
Sure. One issue, that's difficult. I think that I suppose I should also, for those of you who can see me, it's relatively obvious, but for those who can't, maybe my accent, I'm not Cambodian, and so I am a foreigner in this country, and so I come at this from a place of extreme privilege, seeing the way that my government is responding in Australia, and how my family and friends at home are being supported through their welfare system, and then seeing the work that we're doing in Cambodia, and the difference between that, and that I feel like is something should be mentioned. I think that the biggest challenge for Cambodia is that it is a majority informal economy. And so there is, you cannot, even if there was an adequate welfare system or, you know, bailouts for businesses or employees from government, when the 90% of the enterprises in the country are not registered and not paying tax, then even if there is support of some kind, it's really difficult for them to access that. And in an informal economy, many people still are in debt. I think Cambodia has one of the largest populations of people in debt in the world. And when that's through microfinance institutions, for example, or loan sharks, they're stuck in this kind of informal sector, which is not always as regulated as it could be. And so they're kind of not able to access support, and they're stuck with these loan repayments that they cannot repay. So I think that there needs to be an investment in moving enterprises into the formal economy. So an ease in registration, for example, an ease in the ability to trade. And that means export licenses, for example, are very difficult to come by. Support in getting products export ready and product development, licenses, tax registration. And I think there needs to be, I'm sure everyone in the entire world would say this, but tax is hard, and when there are not an ease or many much flexibility in tax, then that can make it really difficult. And I think there needs to be further investment into the informal economy as it is, because it's obviously going to take a very long time to change and a long time to transition people. But I think that there are many organizations, including financial institutions, that are partnering with government to make sure that informal economy still has access to things like cashless wallets, to things like loans if it's needed during this time, Wing Specialized Bank as an example, online safety campaigns by USAID and DAI, organizations like that. I think that there's some investment that's happening, but I think that there can be more that's done to move people into the formal economy, but also make sure that the majority of people that are stuck, whether they're business owners or whether they're employees that are not protected by the labor laws because they're not working for a registered company, that they're still protected to some degree and are able to actually participate more fully in the economy.
Thanks, Celia. Ron, I wanted to ask you as well. I mean, can you identify that one policy that related to trade that governments should be focusing on for small business?
Definitely, I want to ask the government to consider this, pandemic, that it's hurting everyone, and we as employers, we need support in managing our human capital. So maybe delay the tax payment currently now, maybe postpone them until we have, the cash flow is coming back to our, companies, so we can pay on time and not being frustrated on being illegal or try to cheat. In our case in Lebanon, as I'm telling you, we need to remove the capital control so we can have freedom to act with our money. As we as entrepreneurs, we're not asking to hide the money or to take the money outside, because entrepreneur, if you give them $1 million, they cannot stay without working. So we need to turn our capital into generating revenues. But now imagine that we cannot pay an Instagram, promotion because we have no credit cards to pay that. It's not allowed. Not even, we cannot make any promotion on Facebook. We cannot sustain our hosting. So our case is, I'm telling you, completely different on what's the impact of coronavirus. But regarding coronavirus, the delay of taxes is very important. We're not asking for funds. We're not asking from government support to give us money. We know how to generate money. We know how to do as entrepreneur, but we know freedom to act with our money. This is if you can do that and you raise this issue to support Lebanese entrepreneur, I will be very thankful.
Thank you, Rena. Well, and I, I mean, what you talked about in terms of not being able to pay for services to be able to use them, it's a problem, because if you can't, I mean, what we found, and this gets to, the question that Josefina just answered over chat, and I wanted to give her a chance to maybe respond briefly over video, is that you need that access to that entire suite of tools. And if you can't pay for something electronically, and if you can't use the funds in your bank account in order to access global payment systems, that break in the chain means that it's difficult to do everything else.
Yeah.
So I maybe, Josefina, I know that you answered Gabriella's question on the chat function, but wonder if I could just give you a moment to elaborate on your answer and in response to her question about what should micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises do to kind of address these challenges that COVID-19 in Latin America in particular are bringing.
Sure thing. I think my main point would be that thanks to all the technologies that are existing, that have been developed in the last decade, basically, that has, in my view, democratized the marketplace. And that, I think, is the biggest assets payments have at this point, not only to access new markets, but also to expand their impact, right? Not everybody has an actual product like I do. But through, and I'll specifically name what we have personally been using: Instagram, Facebook, Google Pay ads. We are, of course, on Amazon, have been for very many years in the US, but now we're on Amazon Mexico. We have been, I know the Mercado Libre is on, we have been on Mercado Libre as well, but not as active. We use WhatsApp. I think that's one of the most incredible apps that is very well accepted and used throughout Latin America, and I believe mostly outside the US for some reason. And we use that not only for our supply chain, but also to complete sales. The Mexican market is still very shy on executing purchases online. And so through WhatsApp, people feel more confident, and we close a lot of our sales that way. We also use, obviously, all the logistical companies that have been able to complete the process of from purchase to delivery to our final customers. I think the one, when she asked me also what policies I would recommend, and one of the questions was what things our countries have done good. I think in the past, Mexico had a very strong, you call it the Bancomext, it was basically an Exim bank. And it typically had funds, and we used them at the very beginning when we launched our company to sponsor small, medium enterprises and micro enterprises to participate in world trades and global trade events where we can access this international commerce. And that has gone. Every president comes and changes the way it's funded, and basically hasn't had funds for very many years, or is very difficult to access them. And we see some of our counterparts in the developing world that still are being sponsored, and it's really only the way when you're such a small company to participate in such expensive events to access new markets. But it's also the chicken and the egg. You kind of need to participate in those events to really generate large purchase orders. And so that will be one thing that I was mentioning, Gabriela, that I would recommend. It exists, and it's a very kind of ongoing policy from our governments. But the most important is that, again, the world is really the oyster. The world is the really full view of what your potential market is. And oftentimes I meet a lot of entrepreneurs, and their vision is very regional or even country-wise. And our vision from the very beginning was the opposite. The market was the world. And then in recent years, we started developing the Mexican market, and it has become more confident in the online sales. But historically, again, we export to 110 countries, and that has been the bread and butter of the business that we do, exporting our history and traditions, but also how amazingly comfortable our product is.
Thanks, Josefina. I mean, it's interesting because we hear this from entrepreneurs in the United States too, that they've seen traction in international markets, and then that's kind of helped them gain additional traction and get on the ground and grow their business domestically. I wanted to let you know we're excited to have a group of technology providers who represent some of these different components of the e-commerce ecosystem with us. Francois Martinez is with Mercado Libre, an e-commerce platform in Latin America. He may be having a little bit of trouble with his internet connection, but we're going to try to get him plugged in. Amged Shahada, who's the Senior Vice President with UPS out of Brussels, and Eunice Huang, who's the Trade Policy Manager with Google out of Singapore. And so I was going to turn to them in just a moment. I wanted to ask one more question of Eno, and then turn it over to those other companies. Government policies, which we've just been talking about, are really important, but I think so are trade promotion programs, these sort of granular efforts by governments to advise and provide resources to their small businesses about how to go global. And so, for the Global Innovation Forum, we've had a partnership with the US Department of Commerce to take forward this effort called Startup Global, which tries to alert entrepreneurs around the United States that there are a series of local advisors and offices that can provide help and resources in getting your business global. I think you have participated in some of those programs, and so just wanted to see if you could give kind of a just a brief reaction to how those programs, why these programs matter.
Sure. So I would definitely say that the U.S. government does a good job through the local embassies and the commercial services, commercial officers, of course, that have programs that promote your business in other countries. So specifically, one of the programs that we've participated in a few times is called the Gold Key program. And essentially, how this works is you contact your local commercial services officer in whatever state that you're in. You tell them which country you would like to explore and do business in, and then they create sort of like a profile for you. And depending on which ministries or which private entities, larger entities that you want to interact with and potentially network and work with, they will actually set up and facilitate those meetings for you. So specifically, we've done this in Ethiopia and Zambia. And Zambia actually was a really, really awesome experience because we were able to attend with some other delegates from Maryland, other entrepreneurs that were able to join us as well. And that entire week was, literally filled with back-to-back meetings with, the CAA, with the Ministry of Education, with people that we specifically wanted to meet with. So this is a program that I actually had no idea existed, before 2 years ago. And once I saw the potential and really the low, generally no, cost, for this, it was a no-brainer for us. So one of the projects that has come out of this Gold Key program is a sort of like we're calling it the Drone Hackathon Zambia. So it's essentially a business plan challenge for young entrepreneurs, young Zambian citizens and residents to participate in this 5-day virtual business boot camp. And each day we'll be telling them and teach them about drone technology and actually how to start your business. Now, originally this was supposed to be in person, but of course we have now switched to do this virtually. And at the end of the day, this is actually going to grow the exposure of this program, because if it was in person, we would be in Lusaka and probably would be a little restricted on who could actually come to that event. But now that it's virtual, it's literally open up, to the whole country. So that to participate and to have exciting projects like that is very, very impactful. So I would definitely recommend, working with the embassy. They definitely have resources for you to present your country or present your company, present your profile, and really work and target with the clients that you really want to work with.
Thanks, Eno. And, I think those programs, almost every government around the world has a similar program like that. I mean, it may not be exactly the same thing, but you know, our experiences in Mexico, Chile, the Philippines, Malaysia, Nigeria, all around the world, governments have some sort of program to advise small businesses about how to take their business global. And you know, the embassies around the world are good kind of jumping off points for engaging with to get to know the local communities that where you're looking to target your business. I wanted, I think, at this point maybe to go actually. You know, one last question. Mark had asked, how do we register in the training for the training program that you mentioned? I don't know if you want to say anything about that, or maybe just provide a link in the chat or to us that we can circulate later.
Sure. Yeah, I'll put the link right in the chat to our website. So thank you. That's great.
All right. Well, so I wanted to turn to these other businesses that we have in the room. You know, certainly for all of the entrepreneurs that have been speaking, stay with us, and we want to get back to you. But for now, wanted to see if maybe I could turn to Francois Martinez, who's a senior manager of government relations at Mercado Libre. Francois, if you're there, can you just provide you know, any reaction that you want to what has been said so far, and maybe try to link back the experiences of the entrepreneurs that we've been hearing from to the importance of government policies on digital trade and small business?
Yeah. Hi, Jake. Thanks for the invitation. It was really interesting to learn a bit more about the intricacies of all these small businesses. I'm also glad to see that Josefina is also active on Mercado Libre. Muchas gracias. What I was thinking really here is how critical it is to provide availability. So this is related to anything you could imagine around those businesses. So helping them make their services available, make goods available to their audiences, and also make all sorts of supports available to them. And one thing we've learned in Latin America since the beginning of this strange period we're living is that online platforms, online services, online you know, spaces are being absolutely critical to make things available. And you know, people are locked down in their homes, and they just need access to all these services and goods that these small companies are providing. These companies are also providing employment to the people that work with them. So it's an entire ecosystem that's really coming into light, and that needs supporting and forwarding and propulsion really to be able to survive through and push on helping the entire economy. What we've learned also lately is how critical it is to provide, and I think this is a point that Rana was making, to provide liquidity, to provide access to financial services to all these entrepreneurs that need to go through these strange period and make their business still fly, to be able to, you know, keep the employment running, keep the companies alive. And this is something that maybe it's a bit more of a domestic policy, but it is important to keep financial services running and liquidity available, so entrepreneurs can finance or refinance their businesses. Another very strong item that we've noticed is logistics have been very much impacted in some places, and you need to deliver, you know, the products that you're trying to sell, or even the services you're trying to provide. It is absolutely critical to focus on the availability of logistics, that including in the domestic side of things, not necessarily only in the international side. It is important to perceive that there is no international logistical system that can work without the local systems. This is something that we've been focusing a lot in Mercado Libre, trying to support the small entrepreneurs so they can have access to a strong network of logistical services. And the last point I wanted to make, and I would maybe want to gather some of the impressions of the other panelists, is how important it is to make the online space available to those who haven't really been active so far. So I guess at some point, any of us have, made the jump into the online space, and it was a very good thing to see, to get the doors open so we could establish our businesses, our presence, as a buyer, if so, in my case, because I'm not really an entrepreneur myself in this case. But it is important to keep the doors open and to make all these ecosystems available to those who aren't really there yet. And, the single person trying to sell something because they lost their job or anything like that, they lost their means of survival. I think the period we're going through really showed us how important the online space is for the general economic well-being. So those are the three items I would like to point out and see if the panelists have further comments on that. Thanks.
Thanks, Francois. So I think before we turn back to the small businesses, I wanted to go to the other companies that we have with us. And so I think what you said is a great jumping off point for Amgad Shahada with UPS. You made the point, Francois, that digital tools were allowed businesses to keep the doors open when physical business was shut down, and so logistics and shipping has a lot to do with that. So Amgad, over to you if you're there.
I'm here. Can you hear me, Jake?
I can. Thank you.
Well, you're right. Excellent point. A great leap off point. I would tell you, for those that weren't aware, during the start of COVID, as you know, passenger airlines around the world shut down in a very rapid pace, almost in a domino effect, depending on where the pandemic was hitting. And about 40% of global freight is carried in the belly of passenger airplanes. So with all those passenger airplanes grounded, we had a tsunami of business, us and our traditional competitors. So you're right. A number of you have made the point on the call that thank God that the transportation companies, logistics companies, and couriers stayed in business. I would also tell you at the same time, we were trying to make sure that we were tailoring what we were providing based on the needs, which were rapidly changing depending on the region you were in the world. So we started doing pulse surveys every week for the last, I believe, 11 weeks now, of a number of businesses in regards to what are your biggest hurdles right now, so that we could understand as we flexed up and shifted our networks, as the supply chains moved around the world. We had to try to get ahead of it by hopefully a week or two, but it was more like every 72 or 48 hours. But some of the other learnings we got from those surveys and those communications and advisory panels were set on this call by the SMEs. Number one issue obviously was funds, availability of funds, ability to pay your employees and stay in business and cash flow. And then secondly, the quick shift to a digital world, right? Some didn't have websites. Some had websites that hadn't been updated since 1972. Some didn't participate in social media. So this very quick shift to learning how to go digital if you're a brick and mortar business, or as we heard, if you're a wholesaler, to become a direct consumer. And then the third biggest thing was really demand generation, right? So after you have a face to the world, and all of a sudden the world is your oyster, how do you find the customers? How do you grow the customers? How do you make sure your landed cost is competitive to those customers? How do you process returns? All of that was accelerated at such a rapid rate. So, the way I like to say it is all of a sudden, we're dealing with the health crisis, but then at the same time, owners and managers of these micro, small, medium-sized enterprises went overnight from working in their business to working on their business. So I would just tell you that I feel privileged every time I participate in one of these webinars with GIF. Both Jake and Jamaica have been doing a great job around the world trying to put together panels to tell the stories. And that brings it real for us at UPS, because we're working with the Global Innovation Forum and a number of global enterprises, large and small businesses, to try to explain to policymakers at the World Trade Organization how critical it is to really work on this digital ecosystem, this e-commerce ecosystem, and the need to make it seamless, to make all the links in the supply chain seamless, because if one breaks, all you're doing is hurting the very companies in your country that are trying to export, import, create inputs, and then re-export. So I would just say to you, everything we've heard here, the need for paperless, the need for seamlessness, the need for the ability to access funds and to work with governments. I think, the jury has concluded that this whole e-commerce ecosystem needs special attention, to take it from where it's been traditionally and what we've been trying to work on for the last decade to the real experience during COVID. And then how do we take what we learned, these lessons we learned, and actually make it better for everybody coming out of it. And then I'm just going to wrap up, Jake, by saying some of the things that we've done at UPS is look at what's happened with businesses during COVID. And we've inventoried, for example, empty spaces in warehouses where there's these clean spaces around the world where SMEs who get global demand for their goods can now leverage UPS through a where-to-go product, it's called, or an e-fulfillment product, to leverage putting some of their inventory and nesting it in strategic places so that they could fulfill more locally, more quickly, and process returns. So, we're a delivery company, but also a digital company that has to meet the needs of clients that are quickly going to a digital, seamless, borderless world. So we're going to work on the policy issues, which is kind of my gig with you and Jamaica and all the other companies. But you also have to marry the commercial solutions to this new digital world. And I love to continue to hear what those needs are and how we can make the two meet in the middle. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Amgad. And I mean, I think everyone's looking to make sure that they're not relying on one single country for supply chain purposes, and so having those multiple distribution centers is important. I think I wanted to turn to Eunice Wang now, who's with Google in Singapore. Eunice, if you're there, would be glad to hear your reaction, and then we'll plan on turning it back to the entrepreneurs for additional comments. Hey, Eunice.
Hi, thanks, Jake, and good evening, everyone from Singapore. Thanks, Jake and Jamaica, for organizing this session. Very, very interesting intervention from the panelists. I really learned, so thank you very much. I just wanted to make some quick comments and observations. That we have heard, is that really going digital is no longer an optional add-on for companies big and small. But really it has to form a core part of the post-COVID strategy for most businesses. So, I mean, if you think about a post-COVID world, what a post-COVID world could look like on one's home market, like what Josefina said just now, looking at export opportunities abroad to reach a global audience at scale, and at a low cost through digital tools. I think that is going to be quite key and crucial for many companies. And two, I think, really looking at a more socially distanced world, what does this mean then for cash, right? What does it mean for e-payments? And could this be an area where interesting things start to happen, because people are more willing to try the sort of digital payment tools. And third, really from the consumer point of view, looking at longer term behavioral shifts to online commerce after COVID blows over. the convenience of shopping online. These things stick with consumers. So thinking about how sort of these new audiences and new target cost consumers who are also looking at competitive goods across markets, right? So they are really just not looking only at their home markets. So these I think are interesting things to keep in mind when you think about a post-COVID world and what and how businesses can adapt as well to the opportunities that are available. But also, I mean, having been in Geneva, understanding also this MSMEs initiative is looking for concrete steps that can take. I just thought I would just offer a couple of suggestions from a more ecosystem level that governments can work on to help MSMEs. I think the first thing is transparency. So the WTO has done a great job in terms of putting out transparency reports, and based mostly on what the members report. But I think these transparency reports need to also go beyond goods and services trade to also include digital trade. So measures that affect digital trade as well, so that companies, big and small, also have a very clear idea of what's going on in different parts of the world. The second is really through overcoming obstacles at scale through digital FTAs, right? So at the WTO, you have a JSI initiative on e-commerce negotiations that are really looking at different parts of the e-commerce ecosystems. So what we heard just now about, digitizing customs procedures to facilitate trade. You have, sort of cross-border data flow issues that addressed through the JSI, but also, just to draw people's attention on it in the States as well. Chile and Singapore have come up with a very, very interesting digital partnership agreement. And as part of that agreement, if you look actually at digital SME dialogue that they have created. So interestingly, I think governments look at FTAs and sort of ways to cooperate with other governments. Also more generally trying to include a module or a chapter that recognizes and advances the specific needs of SMEs to engage in digital trade. I think that would be very, very useful. Third, I think for governments also to bear in mind the need to maintain open digital markets that are facilitative of digital trade, right? So, are your policies enabling your SMEs to have access to competitively priced digital solutions, right? Like cloud computing, for example. That's a great example because it involves a whole range of policy issues like data, cross-border data flows, privacy, and all that. But also, down to the very practical things like relooking your licensing procedures. If I'm an app developer in Vietnam and I want to get online, right? I want to sell my app. Does this mean that every app that I produce needs to be licensed? I mean, so practical questions like that. I think warrant sort of a second look to look at how governments can really facilitate small businesses to engage in the global marketplace. And the final point I want to raise is actually on skills. Right? So COVID has sort of migrated a whole range of companies on businesses really have transformed, and we're going to be seeing this trend continue post-COVID. But as these companies get online, you also need to make sure that they are also equipped with the skills to be able to maximize the use of these digital tools. So this is really where I think public-private partnership can really yield good solutions at scale. So at Google, we've moved our Grow with Google digital training courses online, and those are free for all. But it's not just Google, but other companies also have lots of other wonderful digital training courses out there that are available. So I think it may be useful, just a suggestion, to do an audit of the range of programs that are available, figure out where the gaps are, and how these gaps can also be filled either by public or private sector players. Celia mentioned something that struck me just now, right? That's it. A lot of the online programs were really only in English. So this is, an obvious gap already, right? That we can identify. So if we can identify more of these gaps and then find the right players from the public sector, from the private sector to come together to deliver a solution, I think that will be really helpful. So thank you very much for the chance to participate, and that's all for my comments. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Eunice. To all three of you as well, that was great. And so in a moment, just to give the entrepreneurs a heads up, I'm going to turn to the four of you for reactions to what Amgad, Eunice, and Francois just said. I just wanted to make one brief comment on Amgad's suggestion that e-commerce policy needs special attention. I completely agree with that, and I hope the one takeaway that we all have is that it should be government's role to enable the use of digital tools. But I also worry that there are going to be efforts to increase barriers on digital tools and e-commerce. And part of that stems from a need to raise revenue by governments in response to declining tax bases because of COVID-19. And so you're seeing this already. Mexico just announced that they're going to raise their tasa global, their tariff on incoming shipments. And so, I expect we will see other efforts to make similar moves. There are a series of global tax conversations right now. Some countries are imposing new digital taxes on foreign technology providers. Others have proposed putting on additional taxes in the future. There's also this movement by a small handful of countries at the WTO to suggest that digital import substitution is kind of the way to go to try to grow homegrown technology providers by shutting out or making more expensive services from foreign technology providers. And if there's one thing that I keep hearing over and over again, it's that global technology is essential for companies to operate their business. So I think there's definitely a lot of positive impressions to come out of this for governments, but there are definitely going to be other forces at work here as well. And so just want to point out that I think for all of us, there's a lot of hard work ahead. With that, I heard a couple of things from Francois, Amgad, and Eunice. How important is it to make the online space available to those who haven't been active so far, making sure that entrepreneurs have the digital literacy skills they need to keep the doors open. Amgad talked about needing a visibility strategy to drive demand, making sure governments pay special attention to the global marketplace. Eunice talked about the WTO helping companies get a clear idea of new barriers to trade, trying to audit programs and make sure that there are public and private sector partnerships that can fill those gaps. So with that, maybe on that in particular, if I could turn back to Celia, because I know she had mentioned a partnership that she has with the Ministry of Economy in Cambodia. And so maybe Celia, if you could start there, any general reactions, but then specifically on, filling those gaps through public-private sector partnerships.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I think I agree with all of the comments that were mentioned. Yeah, all very good points. So for us, this is the first time that we've actually had the opportunity to form a formal partnership with government, and it is as a direct response to COVID, which has been interesting. But I think that the formation of public-private partnerships has been really important during this time because they bring, public and private sector players bring very, very different things to the table. And so what we've done is actually create a three-way partnership with She Investments as the private sector aspect, the UN, so UNSCAP and UNCDF, and the Ministry of Economy and Finance in Cambodia, and under which a newly formed entity is operating called Khmer Enterprise. And so we've essentially brought together these two separate partners that we're all talking to about different projects into the one to form a three-way partnership to create a digital resource center And the purpose of that is to create digital resources that are accessible to Khmer entrepreneurs in Khmer language. And that involves a series of resources, which is anything from video tutorials, Facebook Live sessions, Facebook chatbots, a lot of video content being created, through to tools and templates that can be easily downloaded, and through to a basic bookkeeping app that's being developed, again in Khmer language, that is specifically designed for micro-sized and cash-based enterprises, which is the vast majority of enterprises in Cambodia. And that is being designed to enable them to, even if they don't have a formal business, to be able to actually record all of their income, expenses, inventory, cash flow, and be able to produce very, very simple financial reports which they can submit to a financial institution in order to access finance if they need it to survive through this time. So I think, and then also developing partnerships with organizations such as Youth Business International and Google.org, again, to provide digital literacy skills to female entrepreneurs, because small things which before may not have been as important, but learning how to use your smartphone well, learning how to reach your target market on Facebook, learning how to use an email address, learning how to put your business on Google Maps. All of these things were not included in our curriculum before, but are increasingly important now, regardless of whether you have an SME or a micro business. So providing all of these resources and trainings to people in their own language through these public-private sector partnerships is what we're focusing on now and moving forwards.
Thanks, Celia. Brandon, did you want to jump in and comment on anything you heard from the three companies that just spoke?
I do believe I confirm what they said regarding the private sector, public sector partnership, because we as SMEs, we worked hard on investing in ourselves and move forward and speed up in technology and leading, the way. And I believe in some countries, the public sector is behind. And by creating this momentum, I guess we can boost, if they put us in there, as they said, as a priority or as essential, topic to support SMEs, we can foster economy together. So this is what I ask for, So they don't have to underestimate SMEs sector. They are the pillar of any economy, and by partnering together, definitely we can boost any economy, because we invested in ourselves for long to be where we are today, and we are keen to support our governments if they want us to support them. Otherwise, we can leave and go work somewhere else, so other people can benefit from our skills.
Thanks, Rana. Josefina, did you want to jump in?
Sorry, I think I would, in line of what Rana was saying, I think my suggestion to the WTO would be to push the private sector. All these multi-billion-dollar companies that have operations in these Latin American countries, in these Middle Eastern countries, and in Asia, that it would be in their best interest that our local markets or economies grow for their own economic benefits as well, to push the WTO and to push stubborn governments like Rana's and mine. At the end, you need, AWS, Amazon Web Services. You need a Google. You need UPS. You need FedEx, who have very large operations throughout Latin America and the world, for that matter, to make those pushes into the government, to create those partnerships and help develop, to Francois' point, there is a huge part of the world population that is not part of the online marketplace. In Mexico alone, 50% of the population lives in poverty. So right there, you have seemingly a population that has not access to online shopping. And how do you grow that? How do you make them part of the middle class that will have access to online shopping? Is by growing our local economies, and that will happen with more pushes into our governments.
Thanks, Josefina. Eno?
Sure. So just to echo everyone's sentiments, I really appreciate hearing everyone's insight. But again, yes, the public-private partnerships are at the crux of the recovery and the sustainability after we get out of this situation. But to really encourage, especially the small businesses that are able to survive this period, and the ones that have been able to adapt and innovate and come up with different products and strategies to survive. We definitely need to support those businesses, and not just so that they survive, but so they thrive as well. So however we can, continue these conversations, establish, partnerships, is very much needed. And, you guys have definitely covered most of the issues here. So again, I'm just, remaining optimistic about the future, of this, and we're going to do everything we can to encourage, our entrepreneurs and everything to go digital. You need to be online. This is the new normal. And if you can, survive these times and figure your way out, you will definitely be okay in the future.
Thanks, Eno. So I think we're getting towards the end of the second hour. If anyone has any final questions or comments from the participants who are not on the camera, if you could use the chat function and just type them here. I wanted to check in with Ambassador Cancela and see if he's available to provide a reaction to what he's heard this morning or this afternoon where he is. Ambassador Cancela, are you there? Would you be able to maybe just say a couple of words of reaction? Or Maru? All right. Well, it looks like we lost Ambassador Cancela for now. I think if I don't see any more questions on chat. So
I actually had a question in the Q&A section. I don't know if I should key on.
Yeah, please. Go ahead.
Okay. So Dorrington asked a question about the business boot camp. How do you make your money from the training? Essentially, yes, it's through right now the drone camp in a box product. We are coming up with variations to that, so it's not just a youth focused package, but there's a lot of adults looking to get into the industry. So for instance, instead of the supplies you would get with a youth box, for the adults you would get more of like a vest and a takeoff pad and more professional accessories. So that is definitely what's driving us right now. With school programs, we very much anticipate schools to be open back up, at some point, but that doesn't guarantee that companies like ours will be automatically invited back in. They're going to be watching their numbers. They're going to be really keeping things in a safety conscious, way. So who knows what's going to happen, but we are planning to be digital, virtual for the foreseeable, indefinite future. And then there was another question about what are the business applications of drones? They are probably too many to mention, but I know the main ones that we focus on, of course, agricultural needs. So that's everything from monitoring your crops to spraying crops. They even have drones that can plant tree seeds. So we actually are doing some virtual trainings, one of which is coming up in Botswana in a few weeks. So we're going to do the training virtually and then send them, to professional grade drones. So agriculture is huge. The construction industry, being able to map out construction sites and provide that data and those maps in real time, and not depending on, you know, Google Earth or Google Maps, who are, you know, generally outdated. So agriculture, construction, real estate, the delivery sector is definitely picking up when it comes to medical supplies and food. So there's a lot out there, and I'd love to talk more about it, but yeah, there's a lot to talk about there. So
thanks, Anna. So I think I'm probably just going to end it here, and so just wanted to thank all of you for joining us. Really appreciate you spending your time with us. Particularly wanted to thank Rana, Celia, Eno, and Josefina, as well as my colleague Jamaica for all the work that she put into this, and Ambassador Cancela and the WTO Secretariat for making this possible. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and look forward to staying in touch. You'll receive an email from the Global Innovation Forum with a link to where this discussion resides, and I know Jamaica has already put into the chat links to all the various websites that for the entrepreneurs here today. We can also send that around as a follow-up. So really appreciate you being with us, and look forward to being in touch in the future. Thank you.